What's up, guys? It has been with 2020 election predictions, and today, less than a week out from the election, I'm going to cover the presidential forecast, the Senate forecast, and the House forecast all in one video. Right now, what we're looking at is my current presidential forecast, and let me kind of explain some of the states that matter and some of the things that change very quickly, and then we can go straight to the Senate map. So a most recent change was changing Iowa from a lean Republican state to a tilt Republican state. We've seen a slew of polls that have come out that actually have Biden ahead. And this is pretty interesting. So Iowa's to the right of Ohio in 2016. I think it's going to be the opposite now. Well, I think Ohio and Iowa will both still be in Trump's column. We've seen data that some of the trade wars that Trump has had with China, what have helped industries like the steel industry and some of our other manufacturing industries, they have hurt the farming industry some. And so we've seen some evidence in the polls that maybe some of these farmers are not as enthusiastic for Trump as they have been. However, I still think there's not going to be more than like a 9.5 point swing, and that's what Trump won by in 2016. But still, I think that Trump will probably win the state between 1 and 3 points. So I'm kind of splitting hairs, having this in the tilt column, but it could very easily kind of still be in the wing column. Texas, there's been some chatter about this going blue. I don't think it's going to go blue. Ohio, I kind of touched on. I still think kind of part of Trump's path to victory in 2016. Won it by 8, expecting to win it by 3 to 5 points this go around. Kind of going into these three tilt states right here, I think they're very, very different. So Georgia, I have the most confidence in and staying in Trump's column. He won it by 5 points in 2016. I think he's going to win it between 1 and 2 points in 2020. We've definitely kind of seen an influx of young people moving into Georgia, specifically in the urban area of Atlanta, just because they have a lot of jobs, and the Atlanta economy is booming. And we saw in 2018 that the governor's race was pretty close, within about 1.5 points. And I think we've seen a large effort, kind of spearheaded by Stacey Abrams to get out the vote here. So I think it's going to be close. Florida, I've had this in the Biden column before, but looking at the voter registration and early voting data, it appears that the Republicans are closing the gap. The get out the vote effort by Republicans in the state of Florida seems to have worked. They're knocking on doors. They're doing a lot of campaigning, while the Democrats are frankly not. Just I think it's I completely understand why they aren't, because they don't want to go door to door because of the coronavirus. But I also think we've kind of seen a shift. So Trump is underperforming in the senior vote. I think when the coronavirus was raging pretty strongly in Florida, we saw his poll numbers dip a lot, but I think they've kind of steadied. And now that they're pretty even, I think Biden's up by like 0.5 or but so it's still very, very close. I think in the real career politics it actually just shifted toward Trump. But if we look at the 538 weighted polls, it's about +1 Biden. But if we account for the voter registration data, I feel comfortable putting it forward into the tilt Trump column, and I probably have it between 0 and 1 points at this point. Similar is North Carolina, especially with kind of the Senate race changing. Now I have it actually as tilting towards Tom Tillis. While the governor's race, I definitely think Roy Cooper still holds an advantage there. I think on the presidential level and the Senate level, it's going to be between 0 and 1 points. Very, very close in the state of North Carolina. In Pennsylvania, I've changed this from a lean Democratic state to a tilt Democratic state. Pennsylvania was part of Trump's famous path to victory in 2016, along with Wisconsin and Michigan. But looking at the polling data, we've seen a couple of polls, a couple of Republican internal polls. So I definitely don't want to cherry pick them, but I think 2 or 3 of them have this race either tied or Trump slightly winning. If we take that as a aggregate of polling, Biden is still up by +4, +5. But if we use the same polling error that we had in 2016, that gets it right in between kind of 0 and 2 points for Biden. So that's kind of exactly where I have it right now. I think it's probably going to be, right now, if I had to guess, 1 to 3 percentage points for Biden. But definitely this is a place where Trump can win. He's holding rallies, and he's really kind of rallying on this on when Biden said he was going to ban fracking. He's come back on that. I think this is going to be a campaign issue that Trump's going to emphasize a lot. Whether it will work, we will see. But if Trump is to win Pennsylvania and wins this congressional district here, then he wins. So, I mean, it's only one state away, and if he wins Pennsylvania and Arizona, then he wins. So, by no means is this race over. Even though I definitely think that Biden holds an advantage going into the election day. Arizona is going to be hard to predict. The Senate level race, I think, definitely helps Biden. Kind of the down ballot race is going to help him. But Arizona's going to be a very interesting state. I think it might be one of it's. I really don't know where it's going to be. I feel pretty confident putting the tilt Democratic column here, but I think there's going to be a lot of variability here and volatility here. So it definitely could go to Trump, or Biden could win it by a larger margin. This is kind of the average of where I see it is right now. In states like Wisconsin, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Minnesota, just the polling has been larger in Biden's column than it was in 2016. So even if we account for the polling error, Biden still wins the polling error in 2016. Trump definitely has some time to make it closer, but not a lot of time. So he's going to need something like the Comey letter or something in this last week. And also, just kind of to preface all of this, over 70 million people have already voted, which is over half of the people who voted in 2016. So turnout is going to be very high. If turnout is high in the Rust Belt states, I think it's going to be good for Donald Trump, because if you look at the people who didn't vote in 2016, it's it's typically kind of the white voters without a college degree, which overwhelmingly tend to support Trump over Biden. But overall, in states like Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, even Florida, Texas, if voter turnout is high, it hurts Trump. But really, it's going to come down to the Rust Belt. So it's to be seen whether the kind of increased voter turnout is going to help or hurt Trump there. This is my Senate prediction right now. And so while I'm kind of agreeing with most experts that I think Biden's going to win, a lot of kind of the political experts have the Senate race tilting very narrowly towards the Democrats. Right now, I have it tilting very narrowly towards the Republicans, but I don't feel super confident about the states that I have tilting. Currently, the Democrats have no tilting states, and I have 4 for the Republicans. So there's definitely a lot more room for the Democrats to win and maybe expand their majority. But let me kind of explain why I think this. So just touching on kind of the lean Democratic states, I think Mark Kelly was always going to win this race. The scandal that came out when he was dressed up like a Nazi for Halloween, I think it might put a small dent in his support, but by no means will it affect the race, I don't think. John James in Michigan, there's been a couple of polls that have him either slightly leading or tied, but these are kind of the typical internal Republican polls. If you take an aggregate, John James is still down to Gary Peters, but definitely could give him a run for his money, a place where both the Republicans and the Democrats are putting money. So obviously that they see it's decently close. Maine, I really thought Susan Collins had a shot at this before. I don't think her no vote on Amy Coney Barrett's really going to matter. Even though I think that was kind of her thought when she didn't support her, was this might help her with more moderate voters. I could see this maybe turning it into a tilt state, but if we look at the polls, there have been some double-digit polls that have Sarah Gideon up. And even though Susan Collins has won double digits in kind of a Democratic-leaning state the whole time, still, I think that Sarah Gideon's going to win this seat. Okay, now moving into Alaska and Montana, both typically Republican-leaning states. I think they'll be able to reelect their incumbent Republicans. In the state of Iowa, this was a state that a lot of people thought Teresa Greenfield was going to win in the last week or so, but recently on Predicted, we've seen it shift back to the Republicans very narrowly with Joni Ernst. I've always thought the seat was going to tilt very narrowly to the Republicans just because of Donald Trump's victory in 2016 and how large that was. And I think that Joni Ernst will be able to kind of attach herself to Donald Trump and kind of just very narrowly win the state. So that's what I think about in Iowa. In the Georgia election overall, I think this is going to go to a runoff, but I think David Perdue is going to be more popular than either Doug Collins or Kelly Wolf or whoever comes out of that primary and will be able to win. And because I'm expecting a Joe Biden victory, I think there's going to be a lot of grassroots Republican support to get out the vote here. In the special election, I'm kind of thinking the same way. I think there's going to be a lot of like grassroots Republican support, but I also don't think that Kelly Wolf or Doug Collins are as attractive candidates as David Perdue is statewide. So we'll have to see kind of how strong of a candidate Raphael Warnock, that's the Democrat that's expected to come out of the jungle primary. That's kind of like what it's called in the state of Georgia, because that you have to get above 50%. It's not just kind of the winner. It's you can have multiple candidates running. And it's only kind of the top two that are taken to a runoff that'll either be in December or January. I don't know exactly. Next up, going to South Carolina. I don't think anyone expected this to be close from a few months out. I think Lindsey Graham will be able to win this at the end of the day. We've seen he's been able to fundraise more. He goes on Sean Hannity a lot to do this, but I think with the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, he might be able to bring in some conservatives who've maybe been suspicious of him. Lastly, in the state of North Carolina, I think this is going to be the closest Senate race out of all of them. I had Cal Cunningham up in the state before. Recently, though, with Cal Cunningham's sexting scandal, I think it's going to bring this race very, very close. If it turns out that a sexting scandal decides who has the Senate majority, I think that would be kind of crazy. Kind of like how some people say that Anthony Weiner and his and the Comey intervention at Hillary Clinton's email might have decided 2016. So that would definitely be crazy there. Moving into the House, so let me fill out every congressional district. Just kidding. I don't know a ton about the House. One thing I know is that in 2018, 538 definitely got the House on the head. I don't expect the Republicans to take the House by any means, even though Donald Trump has said this. I expect it to be pretty similar to what we saw in 2018. So I think the Democrats currently hold 233 seats. The 538 forecast projects that they'll probably get to about 238.7. I think it'll probably be between 235 and 240, but again, it won't really matter there. So there you have it. Those are kind of my predictions. Less than a week away from the election. Let me know what you think of my predictions, and also comment what you want me to do in these last 6 days. I mean, there's only 6 days left. I only so much I can do, but I would love to do it. And please subscribe here if you haven't already, and like this video. Thanks, guys.